Outworking your parents no longer buys you the lifestyle they enjoyed. If you feel like the system is working against you, the math supports that instinct. This economic frustration stems from a housing system that has become mathematically broken, moving far beyond the typical effects of inflation. The data reveals a specific mechanism, a demographic chokehold that is actively exhausting the housing supply and locking the working class out of the market. This is the historical baseline of affordability. Throughout the 1990s, a typical single-family house cost roughly 3.2 times the median annual household income. That ratio provided a stable equation, allowing local wages to purchase local housing and build equity. By early 2026, that ratio reached 7.12. In high-demand markets, it has surpassed 8.0, exceeding even the most dangerous peaks of the 2006 housing bubble. Over a recent 5-year window, median income rose by 22%, but median home prices exploded by 48%. This disparity has effectively severed the historical link between what people earn and what their shelter costs. Federal Reserve data shows a massive imbalance in asset control. Baby boomers and older generations hold roughly $115 trillion in wealth, while millennials hold just $19 trillion. This gap represents a physical barrier to entry. Older cohorts maintain control over $23 trillion in real estate, locking that equity away from the current workforce. Historically, a concept called housing velocity kept the market moving. As people reached a certain age, they downsized, freeing up family homes for the next generation. But better healthcare and increased life expectancies have introduced a longevity tax. Older generations are aging in place for decades longer than prior cohorts, holding on to existing supply. This creates a demographic chokehold. New families are forming at a rate that far outpaces the release of existing inventory, paralyzing the natural supply chain. For years, economists pointed to the Great Wealth Transfer as the solution, assuming trillions in assets would eventually flow down to younger generations. The data tells a different story. The high costs of end-of-life healthcare and assisted living are actively liquidating that home equity before it can ever be transferred. Family homes are being sold to healthcare networks and institutional buyers to fund extended retirements, entirely bypassing the children who hope to inherit them. By the time the transfer theoretically happens, the purchasing power of that wealth has been hollowed out. This problem is worsened by an inversion of the dependency ratio. The number of retirees is expanding at a historic rate compared to the active working-age population. Young workers are being asked to support a massive elderly population through taxes and healthcare subsidies, while being priced out of the very real estate that same population is holding. Investment firms recognize that this demographic chokehold guarantees scarcity. They are aggressively buying residential property, treating homes as growth assets. This institutional hoarding has divorced housing prices from local wages. Property is now traded with the same speculative frenzy as tech stocks. The worker is structurally positioned to fund the system through taxes, yet the math excludes them from owning a piece of it. Today, a median income family must dedicate 32% of their gross earnings just to cover the mortgage on a median-priced home. For low-income families, that burden jumps to 65% of their gross income. This leaves zero margin for savings. Nearly 40% of low-income adults cannot cover a $100 emergency expense without using credit. The math has created a permanent underclass of renters who transfer their labor wealth upward to property owners every month. If the current trajectory of dependency and wealth concentration holds, the next decade will be devastating for middle-class ownership. As the price-to-income ratio pushes toward 9.0, the concept of a starter home will be eradicated. We are moving toward a society strictly divided between a class that inherited land and a permanent class of renters who can never build equity. This represents a permanent structural realignment of wealth, and the mathematical window to reverse it is closing.